This is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN.Network, and we're at the Sprott Natural Resource Symposium 2019 in Vancouver, BC. With me right now for this Wall Street View is Doug Casey from InternationalMan.com. He's a speaker here at the conference. Doug, always a pleasure. How are you doing?
Very good, Robert. It's delightful having an excuse to come to Vancouver in the summer because this is the nicest city in North America.
It's very beautiful here. We got very lucky with the weather, but usually it's always nice around this time. So, to start, let's get your background for those who may not know. What's your background and everything there is to know about Doug Casey?
Well, it's hard to sum it up in 10 words or less, but when I was a kid, I first wanted to be a paleontologist. That's dinosaurs, and that led me to geology, because paleontology is a division of geology. And later, when I got interested in money, you put the two together and you get the mining business, geology and money. The mining business is about the most stupid business that you can be in for many reasons. So when I talk to so-called legitimate financial people, they all roll their eyes, and I understand that. But the good news about the mining business is, as hard as it is to make any money, it's completely necessary, at least if you want metal. And the stocks are very, very volatile, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. Most financial people consider volatility a bad thing. I consider it a good thing, because these stocks regularly go up 10 for 1, and then drop 95% and do it again, with some stocks going up 100 to 1 and some going up 1,000 to 1. And I have actually owned a couple of stocks that did 1,000 to 1, if you can believe that. And not over the course of a lifetime. I'm talking over the course of a business cycle. So that kind of sums it up. I have an excuse for being in and around the mining business.
Well, good. Well, we're glad you're here, because we want to learn a little bit more about what's been going on in the markets. I last had you on about a year ago. So what's been happening in the metals markets for the last, let's say, 12 months?
Well, I think we've been in a bear market for gold, silver, all the metals. In fact, all of the commodities, including agricultural things like corn, soybeans, cattle, coffee, all these things. We've been in a bear market for commodities generally for the last 8 years. That's a long time. In real terms, commodities are about the cheapest that they've ever been. In fact, we could say the cheapest they've been in recorded history. It sounds like an outrageous statement, but the fact is the longest bear market in history is commodities. They've been going down in real terms for 10,000 years. It's a whole other discussion. We're interested in making money, not a philosophical discussion of commodities. But it's interesting to have a philosophical foundation for these things before we talk about the here and now. So, commodities last peaked in roughly 2011, 2012. But in the last year, I think they've bottomed, all of them, basically all of them. And I think gold and silver in particular are headed up. They're sticking their heads up now, and I think that there's room for them to explode. Now, philosophically, I've always been a gold bug, because gold is honest money. Eventually, when the dollar reaches its intrinsic value, which it will, which is zero, incidentally, gold is going to be reinstituted as money. But more of interest, perhaps, to listeners is how do we profit from that? And I think that these crappy little mining stocks, such as we're surrounded by at this conference, some of them have big potential.
So what's your argument for why you would say some of these commodity prices have bottomed out?
Because most commodities today are selling at or below their costs of production. Very few gold and silver mining companies are making any money, even today at $1,400, and less silver mining companies at, let's say, $16 per ounce. So it's a good time to buy. The cure, it's been said correctly, that the cure for low prices is low prices, just as the cure for high prices in commodities is high prices. And there's no interest on the part of the public in these stocks at this point.
As the cost of production, you're saying that's one of the main symptoms for why the price of some of these commodities is going up. Has that also gone up because some of the more at surface or easy to find deposits or easy to mine deposits it costs more to go deeper?
You're absolutely correct, because people have been looking for gold and silver in particular for thousands of years, literally. So all of the easy to find deposits in the world, surface deposits, high-grade deposits, they've all been found and exploited. The only deposits that are really left are in politically insecure areas where you don't want to invest $1 billion in the mine, because the chances are the government will steal it from you. Or very low-grade deposits, which take huge investments to mine. So high-grade, easy-to-find deposits, all discovered, all gone.
I have to ask, this is just a random question. When it comes to the metals markets and precious metals, what's been the most interesting thing that you've seen in the last 12 months that's you just haven't seen before?
Well, there's really nothing new under the sun. Various metals come in and out of vogue. There was a vanadium boom a while ago. There was a tantalum boom before that. There was a lithium boom not so long ago. So there have been a couple of rare earth booms. Before that, 20 years ago, there were booms in the so-called strategic metals, things like cobalt and such. So this is all kind of cyclical. These things come and go. But it's good to remember that there are only 92 naturally occurring elements. And everything in the world is made out of those elements. And you have to find them in economic quantities. So as hard and as expensive it is to find them and then to produce them, the mining business is not going anywhere until, of course, probably in a generation or two, we'll mine the asteroids, where there are huge amounts of all kinds of metals in kind of pristine form, but they're millions of miles out there in the asteroid belt, beyond Mars even. So that'll eventually solve the resource problem for planet Earth, but that's a long while out there. You read about these things in science reports, but don't get too excited for the near term.
I remember we did an interview with an asteroid mining company 5 years ago, and it's still a ways away.
Well, listen, there were a couple of companies that were fantastic promotions. How long ago? Maybe 8 or 9 years ago for subsea mining. Like that movie with, you remember where they're mining under the sea? The Abyss. Yep. Yes, like that. They both went bust, unfortunately.
So I'm going to ask you a question that you asked me, and I'm going to throw it right back at you. So how do you make money in markets like these?
Well, you buy low and sell high. Now, that sounds, well, who doesn't know that? It's a lot harder to do than it seems. If you want to buy low, you have to be a contrarian. And that means that over the last 3, 4 years anyway, a lot of these companies, a lot of these little mining companies, or wannabe mining companies, were selling for less than the cash they had in the bank. That meant that you got their data banks, their properties, their managements. Some of the managements are actually worth something for less than the cash in the bank. You got them for free. So that's when you buy these things, and you sell them when metals and mining and things like that are on the front pages of the newspapers. That's not the case yet, but I think we're building up to that, because gold and silver are, as I said, they're sticking their heads above water at this point.
So you're alluding to my next question. In the near term, what are some of the catalysts that you're seeing moving forward that our investor audience should be looking for in the precious metal space?
Well, look, there's one very important macro thing that we have to keep in mind, and that is since the crisis that started in 2007, all the governments in the world, not just the Americans, but the Europeans, the Chinese, the Japanese, and all the little countries, they've all printed up trillions and trillions of currency units. And those currency units have resulted in higher retail prices, but much more, they've resulted in booms in stocks and bonds and real estate. And this is very, very dangerous. The only things that haven't been seriously affected so far are the commodities. And I think that they're going to be next. So keep that in mind. I mean, in putting money in commodities at this point is almost like a government guaranteed investment. Guaranteed by the stupidity of the governments and guaranteed by the fact that in order to keep the shaky world financial structure together and make it possible for all the debt in the world to be paid, they're going to, or they feel they're going to have to create trillions more currency units and reduce and keep interest rates as long as they can at these ridiculously low levels. I thought it was metaphysically impossible for interest rates to go below zero. Well, it actually is, but it's happened. So this is creating huge distortions, huge misallocations of capital in the world. And we're on the cusp of what I call the Greater Depression. If you look at what happened in 2008 as entering the leading edge of a hurricane, a financial hurricane, we've been in the eye of the storm since about 2010. Big hurricane, big eye. But even as we speak, I think we're entering the trailing edge of the hurricane. And it's going to be much worse and much longer lasting and also much different than the unpleasantness that we had in 2008 and 2009. So keep that in mind. And when that happens, people are going to increasingly realize that all of these currencies are just floating abstractions. They're worthless pieces of paper that are accepted right now by bankrupt governments. And there's going to be a panic into gold and silver. And as a matter of fact, I think that gold is going to be reinstitutionalized as money. Even as we speak, the Chinese and Russians are buying large amounts of gold. And I think we're going to see a gold-backed ruble, a gold-backed yuan, or maybe just pure gold being used as money in the future, the way it was in the last century, before 1933. So that's going to happen again. So I think it's intelligent for anybody that wants to save capital to do so in the form of gold and, to a lesser degree and for somewhat different reasons, silver. So that's the argument. And if I'm right about that economic call, there's going to be a lot of capital that's going to flow into these crappy little mining stocks. And you're going to see them, once again, run 10 or 20 to 1 as a group, with individual companies doing even better.
And Doug, where can our audience go and find more information about you?
Well, I have a website. It's called internationalman.com because over the years I've traveled to over 155 countries, most numerous times, and lived in 10 of them. And internationalman.com makes for a very interesting daily read, so you should go there and look at that. And I have a series of novels that are kind of a journal of crazy things that I've done. The one that came out a couple years ago is Speculator, which is about a bush war in Africa and making and losing $100 million. And then Drug Lord, about the drug business, legal and illegal. And we're putting the finishing touches on the third book in the series, Assassin. And then it gets more radical from there. So those two things, it does indeed. When you see how our hero, Charles Knight, ends up He's not just the Antichrist, but he's a good guy. That's the important thing to remember. He goes beyond being the Antichrist. But that's in novel 6, so
So is
you'll have to wait for that one.
but let me ask, is the flow through that all of them have hoards of gold?
Charles is a gold bull. He doesn't trust governments.
My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm your host on SNN Network, and we're at the Sprott Natural Resource Symposium 2019 in Vancouver, BC. With me again is Doug Casey from internationalman.com, speaker here at the event. Doug, thank you for joining me today.
Robert, it's always a pleasure.